Hello, hello. I'm so psyched about this. I love this big round room. I feel like Professor X in here or something. Right? And I've got a laser and a prompter. I've never given such a fancy talk before, so hopefully you'll be rewarded by all this technology. I am from Xolvio. We are no strangers to this event. We spoke here last year where we gave a storming dissertation on the nature of schema storming. I'm going to be talking about some things that are an evolution of ideas that we've had since then, a lot of work that we've done along the same vein, that's sort of an implementation of that. I know that this is one of the last talks at the end of 3 days of a packed event. Those of you who are not still hungover are probably already booking cabs back to the airport as we speak. Were you holding your hand up to say you're hungover? Okay, I know. It's very honest of you, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to try to keep this light. I'm going to try to keep it upbeat. I do have a lot to talk about, and a lot of it is very cool. So try to keep up. It's going to go a little bit fast. Because this is 2024 and this is a technical talk, it has to have something to do with generative AI. So I confess I had some of these slides generated by DALL-E. This is what it thought a supergraph would be. So I guess this little guy protects the universe using the power of trigonometry or something like that. I'm going to skip over the what is a supergraph part of the talk. I think everybody's got it. You got it? Okay, unless you've been asleep for the last 3 days, you got it, right? Okay. Some of you may be at the beginning of your supergraph journey. I've talked to a lot of people here who are just kind of getting started, right? You got some unknowns, some questions, some things that you're thinking about, and there's a lot to take on, right? Like, it's not a small undertaking. How do I write my first line of schema? And it's just an excellent question, right? Like, how do I write that line well? How do I make sure that I've set my process and my team organization up to do this, right? How do I do it right, keep it right, right? Maintaining a schema in and of itself is a challenge, right? Open questions for new adopters, right? Some of you may be a little further into your journey and you might be experiencing some pain points. This is not generated by DALL-E, by the way. I think it's funny that there's an ad for tables, ladders, and chairs right next to that. Like, incredible product placement in this image, you know what I mean? But I'm sure you've heard in the conference some of the pain points that you might be experiencing, right? You know, you might have built too much schema, right? Nobody's using it, or it's duplicate. You might be building too little schema. People are at the gates, just dying to get their hands on it, right? You may be in a case where your schema has kind of drifted away from your business domain. Like, these two languages don't even make sense anymore and aren't even intelligible. You might be suffering for what I think Sam coined as a Conway-led schema design, where your schema looks a lot more like your organization than your actual problem space, right? Issues that happen to everybody, right? So building a supergraph is potentially a massively consequential undertaking for your organization, right? And doing something that can have such a big effect, of course, comes with some new challenges and problems. This is to be expected, right? Don't panic, you know? There's a lot of people in this room, at this conference, in this community that can help. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that I think you should do, and I'm, of course, going to suggest a specific set of solutions that I think are particularly good. This is the agenda for the talk, right? To get the most from your supergraph investment, I want you to evolve the socio-technical. I want you to shift everything left. This is not a political discussion, by the way. And I want you to merge your process with your graph. At this point in the talk, this may seem a little bit vague. All this is going to make more sense as we go on, I promise. If we get to the end and it doesn't, I'll be receiving your questions by, postcards or something like that. No? We think that something called narrative-driven development can help you do all those things, right? Narrative-driven is a .org. It's an open thing. It's an idea that came out of Xolvio and its learnings and thought processes over the last couple of years, but it is something that is free to the world as an idea, a process, a technique, right? Got a community of 250 plus people contributing. We would love to have more of you in there. I'm going to start off by telling you what narrative-driven development is, and then we'll get back to that agenda, right? So it is a visual process of collaborative software design. It's a process. This is something that people do, not something that computers do, right? We get together and we work together to design software solutions. It's not necessarily a replacement for your agile process. It's more like a combination of refinement and solution design, kind of at one table, right? It's visual. We like pictures. We like diagrams. It's something that you do that you can see. It has a form that is apparent to you. A very reductionist view of this might be that it's like a very fancy flow diagram, or maybe what a sequence diagram would be like if it didn't hate you. That has a point, but I think it might miss the point, right? The key thing here is that it's visual, right? It's about software design, right? This is not like a general case. I'm really exploring the space over here. This is fun. It's not a general case framework for solving all kinds of problems, for about designing software. All the metaphors and idioms are in that space, right? it is collaborative. You could do narrative-driven design all by yourself, I guess. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not really for that purpose. It's for teams working together. It is explicitly about inviting collaboration, bringing people to the table, not only just making it possible, but almost like demanding their presence, right? Strong believers that nothing builds consensus quite like participation. People buy into something when they're invested in it. They see their ideas on the page in the solution, right? I've been telling you quite a lot, far be it from me to defy the words of one of the old masters. Need to do a little bit of show here. I don't know if you guys are Chekhov fans. I minored in Russian literature. No, anyway. And I just got done telling you that this thing is essentially visual. I really need to show you some pictures, right? So by way of furthering the introduction quickly, let's come up with an example. Let's say that we are a taxi booking company and we're making a new feature that helps tired conference attendees schedule that taxi that's going back to the airport, right? I hail down my team. We're going to do an hour Zoom call, a narrative session. We're going to design this feature, right? Get the common cast of characters together at the risk of being, pigeonholing too much. A product owner, a designer with great hair and a better beard, a web developer who loves his stand-up desk almost as much as he loves thinking that he has the most monitors in the building, and the back-end developer who loves sitting down and he knows he has the most monitors in the building. Okay, this is kind of the essentials of like the narrative form in a visual form, right? 3 lanes stacked on top of each other with time going from left to right in what we call moments. It's where the name comes from. What is a narrative but a series of moments, right? The middle lane, the context lane, that's really the spine of the whole thing. It's holding it together. Like what's going on at a product level? What are we achieving? What are we doing? Not tied to any particular implementation. Interaction at the top, your user interface, how people interact with the thing that you're building. At the bottom is your system lane. This is where the big back-end nerds live. Anybody? There might be a few in here. I'll just point at myself, I guess. And where things like persistence and storage and queues and all these kind of great pieces of a system reside, right? Very first thing the team does is establish what is the outcome? What is it that we are trying to do? In this case, our outcome is customer schedules a ride. We like to get this out front immediately as a matter of focus, not only to keep people on task with what we're attempting to do, but also to keep things off the table that we are not attempting to do. Doesn't mean those ideas get thrown away. There are ways within narrative to write them down, to keep them for later, but we gotta keep people in a pretty narrow lane in order to be successful in a short period of time, right? Okay, usually the product manager jumps to the fore, and let's start establishing our context, going backwards in time to start. What's the element of context that occurs right at the end? The booking is confirmed, right? And then we fill in the rest of this context lane, enter details, calculate the price, view the price, confirm the reservation, right? This is an abstract notion of the entire journey, each one of these being a moment in time going left to right. Unmuting the microphone is our well-coiffed designer and his friend, the front-end developer, and now they're gonna think about some elements of the interface. It's a search screen, price review screen, confirmation screen. Looking good? Okay, this thing isn't gonna work without a back end though, and no technical diagram is complete without a bunch of arrows. So we've got some more stuff to add. And our back-end developer tells us, oh, we need a query, so they're working with GraphQL. Great, right con. And we're gonna need a reservation mutation, right? Hook this up with some arrows, show the path through the journey, all right? Basic, this is a picture of a narrative. This is the process, right? I managed to explain that to you in like 2 or 3 minutes, right? Like it didn't take long. You now know enough to be useful participants in a narrative session, all right? Doesn't mean you know everything, there's more to learn, but you can pick it up as we go. We think that this kind of easy accessibility of process is really important, especially in an industry where we've been through a couple different iterations of these ideas. I don't know about you, but I'm not that keen on sitting through another workshop for 3 hours so that I can learn the things that I need to know for the 3-hour workshop where we're actually gonna design the software. You know, more complicated process is not needed. There needs to be an easier road in. This is especially important for non-technical people, as well as like executives and getting their involvement, because they tend to be very like, authority rich, but time poor, right? Coming back to the main agenda, okay? That's what narrative is, right? We're gonna learn more as we go, but that's the baseline. Evolve the socio-technical, right? You're looking at me right now. Very fancy buzzwords, Mike. Nice. Not really, there's actually quite a lot to this. Unless you are hacking as a solo developer the next unfathomable indie game, right? You've got a team, and that team's got to communicate, right? There are certain norms about how you communicate. Email, phone call, Jira, Slack, whatever, hallway chats, whiteboards, you get it, right? You probably talk to other teams. There's a whole matrix of communication going on, right? And that communication probably involves also, reluctantly, meetings. Some of you are looking at me right now like this, actually. Taking full advantage of any technical change almost certainly requires some sort of change in the way that you communicate and collaborate. This is what I mean by socio-technical change, right? It really is mapping your human and people process around the kind of important technical realities and constraints that you face. In building a supergraph, you are building a big shared structure, and it's got a lot of contributors and perspectives and skills and people's effort that is adding up into one thing, right? So for that reason, building a supergraph is particularly tied to the effectiveness of the communication in your organization, right? Building a supergraph, of course, requires a new kind of technical process. That goes without saying, but it requires a new kind of human people process as well. This is something that we've learned from experience, right? Quick reference from the real world, the great team at Xolvio, I talked to their founder, Adam, and one of their co-founders, Adam, just by way of generating, an example from an actual narrative user, right? They're enthusiastic adapters, right? And so Adam comes from a background in like what I would call proper engineering, like real engineering. We have like an accreditation, and I don't know, you're in like a secret society and they have a handshake and stuff like that, right? But in this world, they use a set of diagrams that all practitioners understand. Like this has a clear, definitive meaning to them that's unambiguous. They all know how to read it. They all know how to use it, right? And he was like horrified when he came to software to learn that we don't have this. All right, the closest thing is like, I don't know, UML, right? But how many people in here like using UML? Get out. Okay, just get out, right? Nobody likes using UML. If you claim it, you're a liar, or just funny. Anyway, we'll talk later. I'm sorry about whatever happened to you. But nobody actually raised their hand. I'm just, okay. Just for safety's sake, you know what I mean? And we have this mixed bag of artifacts and Jira issues and pictures and different approaches and stuff, right? And it all adds up to this kind of inconsistent mess, which can be even inconsistent within a single organization. Like multiple teams use Jira in different ways at one team. This is not helping, right? It's not an effective way to collaborate on software solutions. And he was also really taken aback by the user story, right? Which has become kind of, less and less useful, I think, over the years, right? We build all these pictures, and they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. For some reason, we then write the literal 1,000 words, all right? And we're like, okay, well, maybe we're taking this a bit too far. We write all that down. We lost all of this rich information that was in the picture, and then we just like strain all of the implementation detail out of it. There's no engineering detail. There's no, like, how do I build this thing? And kind of dumbed it down. Like, Adam from Xolvio was like, oh, I'm not a dummy, I just don't write software, right? Like the basic lexicon and vocabulary of this makes sense to me. I can't understand this, like don't take it off the table, right? And then you end up having to have like a secondary system for specifying and implementing this stuff anyway, right? So, Xolvio, as a reaction kind of to the current state of the industry, their socio-technical design is go to something like narrative, highly visual, highly collaborative, intentionally bring more technical, non-technical together, right? Coming back to the general case of Supergraph, right? Hopefully you're getting some idea for why socio-technical evolution means something to Supergraph adopters. Getting the most from your Supergraph requires not only more communication, but new kinds of communication, right? Narrative-driven development is an effective framework for adapting to this new reality. Strangely enough, this is in fact not generated by DALL-E. This is a real toy that you can buy right now. I tried to get one on the way here, but I couldn't find it anyway. So Christmas is coming, and keep me in mind, I suppose. Just to conclude, I know of all the socio-techno sounds like some sort of like self-help program. It's not. It's one of the most important things that you can do to aid your Supergraph journey, all right? Next topic, we're gonna shift everything to the left. I really like this DALL-E image because there's 3 second gears. Everybody knows what shifting left means, right? Do more earlier, right? Get it all done as quick as you can so that you don't have big problems later down in your process, right? But how you can shift left with narrative-driven development, right, depends a little bit about how you do narrative-driven development. Like you could do it on a whiteboard, right? This is totally possible, right? If you really hate yourself and your team, you could also do it on Post-it notes, like this is also tractable. You could do it in Miro. We have a free template out there that anybody is welcome to use, and this is a totally effective means of pulling it off, right? But Miro is a generalist tool. This is not a generalist problem. Like I said, we're trying to build specifically software, right? So we're software developers. We develop software. We made Narrative Studio. Narrative Studio is the platform for doing narrative-driven development at scale, I would say, and with a maximal efficiency, right? Brings consistency to your models. It adds a bunch of helpful features that you're going to need. Makes it easy to do it with multiple teams that are collaborating together. Remember that fake company that was building the taxi app? Let's just sort of check in for them in a second. Here's a screenshot from Narrative Studio. I'm using screenshots because I'm not brave enough to do a live demo. The winds seem to be blowing in kind of a strange direction in that area right now. So I'm just going to keep it simple. This is the frame that they built, and we had sort of in slide format before, taken in Narrative Studio, right? And I think it looks pretty good, right? Of course, it's got nice like curvy arrows and stuff, right? But there's more to it than that, of course, right? Narrative Studio lets you layer in more kinds of data. You can see we've added a persona in the person of Dan, who I guess is the guy who's booking the taxi. Layer in visual artifacts that you have, like an extract from your design tools, let's say Figma, right? So that you can see exactly what the web interface with this is gonna look like, right? And put it directly next to the solution design, right? More interesting to me, because I love this sort of thing, you can embed a formal specification directly on the canvas, and there you go. Then you can do things like tag and filter, right? So this lets you kind of slice and dice, see what's in progress. Different visions and perspectives on the work in progress, right? You also get a particularly high form of value when you've got a lot of like work going on, multiple projects, you're building up narratives over time, teams are collaborating, people can see what each other are doing in this kind of consistent form, connect them up, you get the idea, right? As you may recall, I work at Xolvio. Xolvio is the original Apollo Pro Services partner, which was a formalization of a much longer relationship built on a shared love of great software and I guess a shared hate for like serifed fonts. But anyway, together we work on a bunch of client relationships. We work with Ford Credit. Let's use them as an example of success in this space. Ford Credit is running a program of 80 plus contributors. They're all using narrative-driven design and Narrative Studio to get their work going in the same direction. Another fun DALL-E image, everyone. Getting 8 people going in one direction is hard enough. Getting 80 people going in one direction is like, you know, cat herding at a pretty massive scale, right? So helping these cowboys rope these felines and getting them going, Ford is getting, you know, massive utility out of the narrative approach. Ford also reports that bringing these different roles together on the same table, you remember these guys? Back end, front end, programmer, still got that great hair thing going on. It significantly boosts their team cohesion, communication, idea generation. It helps people understand where they are as part of like the larger story of this program of work that they're developing. And specifically, collaborative brainstorming is helping them prevent roadblocks, right? So for those of you who have been part of like an enterprise scale program of software development, who has ever been in like the replan? The replan is the worst meeting that ever happens, right? Because you started this initiative and you came out of the gates like running full speed, everybody's high fives. 2 months in, you realize that none of that stuff that you planned could actually be built in the available time and it's not gonna work and blah, blah, blah. Oh, it sucks, right? I mean, any unintentional cycle in your process of development is bad, but the replan is particularly bad because it involves a lot of teams and long-term goals. What a nightmare. Ford Credit has not had a single replan since they've adopted Narrative Studio, narrative-driven development, and this is significant. I mean, at least Apollo, Xolvio, Ford Credit, working together, building a supergraph, narrative-driven development. We've shown that it is possible to make a plan that can take at least like 1 or 2 punches on the mouth, despite the old adage. Right? Concluding that point, you get what I'm saying, shift everything left. We think narrative-driven development can help you shift left faster and farther and better, right? Last point, and we're getting spiritual on this one. So is everybody ready for a little yoga? This is interactive. I'm gonna need you to stand up. I'm just kidding, there's no standing up. Okay, merge your process with your graph, right? This is my favorite DALL-E image. Check this one out. I said show a person who's merging with a complex graph. Nailed it. Nailed it. Love it. I'm not encouraging you to do that exactly. What I am encouraging you to do is to seek out best-of-breed tools and processes that are specific to what you are doing, right? You are building a supergraph. Not too many people in here would try to code without an IDE. Like, not too many people would try to build a website or web application without a framework. You would not believe how many people try to build and reason about a supergraph using tools, thoughts, and ideas that are mired in the world of REST or, God forbid, I know Matt said it, SOAP, or this older generation of technology, like work with the stuff that works with the stuff you're working with, right? GraphQL is absolutely a first-class citizen in Narrative Studio. We think this is best-of-breed tooling, and we're getting to the part where we get really excited. Like, I like this stuff, right? So starting a bit moderately, there's a feature of the platform that we call detailed action scripts. They're really kind of perfect for, where is the actual action script? 1 second. Oh, no. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, great, great. So I've got up here, oh, I forgot how to laser. Boom. Like we've got, we're building this products query, right? But showing like a more detailed breakdown of our intention of how to build this, right, is perfectly aligns with the way like resolvers and data sources sort of line up and work in a typical implementation of this kind of thing. It's a small thing, right? It's kind of an optionally revealable type that you can match up against the actual query, right? But an important thing that works really well in the GraphQL world, right? All right, so those like kind of cool. Let's build something a little cooler, right? Query building via collaborative annotations. We've been showing off some of this in the hallways. Anybody seen the demo already? Okay, this is similar, but it has me, so it makes it better. And that actually doesn't make it significantly better, but what are you gonna do? Where's Andy when you need him? It is, I think, very cool. I mean, we launched this for Summit, so it is brand new on the platform, and I love it, to be frank. So switching away from our taxi building app, we're gonna now use the Xolvio swag store as like our kind of example application. We've got a product page in an e-commerce site, right? And in our narrative, we have embedded this picture of what the web application is gonna look like, right? Grab a query, we attach it. Immediately we choose which one of our graphs we're associating this with, which is already pretty cool, I think. So annotate that design. Choose our image. We say, okay, here's the picture of the product page. This is where stuff starts getting really cool, I think. Say I want to add a field. I drop my little green annotation box directly on top of the image. I find the field in my query that is the source of that thing that I'm annotating, right? Automatically get my query written for me, right? So this is your front-end designer and developer and your back-end developer building a direct visual connection between query and design right at the point of initial collaboration, right? Right at the time that they're talking about that solution, as early as possible, right? And this is using very graph-specific tooling to achieve it. We can do another one, right? It builds out our query even further. The eagle-eyed among you may have noticed, I'm gonna use my laser, pew, this thing, instant mock server URL. What is that all about? I'll tell you, because it's the third feature that I want to discuss. Instant mock is an open source library Xolvio created, but it's free both as beer and software, and we would of course welcome contributions as well as usage, right? Among many other things, it pulls, it interacts with the Apollo Graph API to expose your schema into Narrative Studio. It can be used entirely outside of Narrative Studio, by the way, if you want to do it that way. Just a quick checkpoint on what is the mock and instant mock. Some people use different language for this. Some people know it as a stub or a double or a fake. What I'm just saying is software that's a stand-in for some other software, right? It's like a fake implementation of something. These are often used for like accelerating development or quality automation, right? So the problem with mocks is that they're software. You have to build them, right? You have to spend some time developing them. I know there's a lot of frameworks and approaches out there for making this a little bit easier, right? But this still has to be done. And in most enterprise environments, specifically, nothing gets done in less than 2 weeks, right? That's how long a sprint cycle is. That's the time it takes to schedule something, complete it, launch it to production, right? So you have this problem where everybody gets together and collaborates, and your front-end team has to wait 2 weeks for this mock to appear. When it does appear, they can start building against it, but they've already forgotten 2 weeks. They've had 2 weeks of coffee, and they're battled, and they can't remember what was discussed before, and they've just been waiting, right? So like you've got this linearization of your development process, which you would much rather parallelize, right? Of course, right? So going back to our example here, imagine that we add something into this query that's not in the schema, right? Very helpfully, it gets underlined in red, new field, not in my schema. This is something that doesn't exist here, right? That causes this little button to pop up, create instant mock, because I'm a curious type. I tap it. And it immediately creates a schema proposal for the change to the schema that I want to make. So off that goes into my governance process for managing the workflow of accepting changes to the schema, right? Directly from this initial point of collaboration, right? There's my schema proposal. You guys are probably familiar with these sort of things. Going even further, I can seed my data in this mock any way I want, right? So instant mock will return just the normal kind of fake data back to me, right? That's not a problem. But If I want to overwrite that with data that's more specific to my application, I can, including the field that I'm adding, right? That doesn't already exist in the schema. Next time I run the query, I get back the data that I mocked, right? So the instant mock as a standalone has some more features where you can build specific responses to specific inputs and sequences of calls, the kind of stuff that you want in a mock. This stuff gets persisted in the instant mock server, and so it's instantly available, right? I think this is, well, I'm not sure this adequately summarizes my feelings about this, right? Because let's just take a second. I've been part of a lot of software delivery processes in my day, and from the look of you nerds, you have been as well. I mean that in the nicest possible way, by the way. In the I'm proud to be among you sort of way. And I can't believe that I have the good fortune to actually be trying to teach you something, which is kind of baffling to me, but here we go. I've never seen a tool that operates like this, that brings things quite so closely together, right? Like, in the act of collaboration, design, and making this happen, the team is, not only agreeing on a contract, right? But they're starting the process of migrating that contract into kind of the globally deployed graph. They're building a fully mocked, custom-seeded mock directly for that change that everybody can walk away from and work with immediately. Like, your front-end developer can immediately start working against this. Your back-end developer not only has the contract to build, right, but also the seeds that are necessary to build, like, effective test automation, right? It's just a richer specification for what's going on, right? So I'm gonna take this one step further, and I'm gonna say, we think this is awesome. I definitely know I can include all these guys in the t-shirts in the front here, the Xolvio squad. Maybe a few of you have been brought over to the fold. Let's hope, anyway. I'm tempted to just objectively say that it is awesome, but I'm not quite sure. Narrative-driven development is a relatively new thing, and Narrative Studio is something we're working on. These features are brand new, and you know what we need to do to get from I think, we think, to this is? More feedback, interaction, right? And we would love to get that from this community in particular, right? So just to conclude the sort of main agenda, this kind of thing is exactly what I mean when I say merge your process with your graph. Get that tooling and process like as perfectly aligned with the technical decisions and investments that you're making that you can. In summary, to get the most out of your investment in Supergraph, we think you should evolve the socio-technical, shift everything left, merge your process with your graph. We think the best way to do this is to employ narrative-driven development, try out Narrative Studio. Choosing to build a Supergraph is a great way to push your business forward, right? Choosing to do that using narrative-driven process, we think, is a great way of maximizing the potential of that choice. Here's a QR code. You scan this QR code, you can get into the queue to try out Narrative Studio, and we would love to have each and every one of you in there, especially if you're keen on giving feedback, very good at breaking things, or just like making fun pictures and talking about it on the internet. There's a million ways to get involved with what we're doing with Narrative, though, right? Xolvio, we're very happy to be a sponsor of Summit, and very thankful to Paula team for hosting us here and throwing what I think was an amazing event with possibly the best conference food I've ever had. I know that's a side. We can talk about that in a subgroup later, but I'm available to answer questions. The Xolvio team's available to questions. We got a booth that's like just out there in the hall. I know the conference only goes on for like another hour and a half, but we crave the interaction. You can join the NDD community on Slack. You can sign up for the mailing list. I'll give you a tattoo, like whatever you want. I think this is some great stuff that has the potential to bring a lot of value to a lot of you, and I hope you feel the same way. Very thankful to be here. I'm very thankful for your attention and for listening. I would love it if you could tell us what you think. And that's it. Thank you.